Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm a food fan pretty much everywhere.
Hello, my name is Khuê, and I'm Midnight Cat on Instagram.
And I'm Alesa and Khuê on Instagram and YouTube.
And this is our New Year episode. How's everybody doing on this fine day? I feel like the past couple years we've been doing this, we've always been blessed with good weather on New Year's Day. So, when I walked into the room this morning, I was like, oh, you know what? We're so lucky. It's always sunny on New Year's Day. It's like, it feels good.
There's something very, very unusual about taking the train on New Year's Day because it's almost empty, right? And trains just aren't empty in Japan. Like not even during the pandemic wasn't really that empty. But now only on New Year's Day, there's no one here, and even like the convenience stores, some of them are closed. It's a very strange thing.
Yeah, even on the street you walk and it seems like a ghost city in the morning because no one's going out.
Yeah.
There's no a postman or a garbage truck. Nothing. It's really silent. Very peaceful.
Yeah, so we've done this. This is now the third year in a row that we've kind of gathered on New Year's Day, and just to give a reminder to the listeners, what we do, and it's kind of almost become a little bit of a tradition, is that I like to talk about our predictions from last year. So about 335 days ago, we made some predictions about how this year would go. I think it would be fun to see how those predictions came to pass and, review our year a little bit, and then let's make some predictions for the next year.
Yeah.
So last year, we had several predictions. Alyssa, you and we predicted that there would be smaller ink bottles. We said that people don't necessarily want to have large 80 ml or 50 ml bottles. It'll be easier and more convenient for people to have maybe 30 ml bottles, and 20 maybe too small, but 30 ml bottles I think is really a nice sweet spot. Do you think that's come to pass?
Absolutely. Like even the new pen company Guitar came out with just a tiny bottle, but even Iroshizuku repackaged like their 4 inks, and that is actually a really good size because not only are they small, they kept the openings really wide. So the openings are, really easy to refill. So I think, they're, the Iroshizuku bottles are pretty big, but then the smaller ones, they're just as useful. And, you can get 4 colors instead of 1 for about the same price. So
yeah, you're talking about the quote-unquote limited edition versions of the regular versions, right? Yeah, I did notice that as well. And I think, one of the brands that has really blown up, I feel like especially this year in Japan, is Ferris Wheel Press, known for having tiny bottles. Unfortunately, they don't have the wide openings, as you said, as you noted with the Pilot. But I just wish that they made those bottles also available separately, because I think the point is to have less overall ink instead of more overall ink, and you're kind of forced to buy them all together. But yeah, I do think that there has been, it's probably not as quick as I thought it would be in terms of people picking up this trend, but I definitely think that there have been more smaller bottles rather than larger bottles. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I think J.R. Bond came out with this 1 liter bottle, and then there was all this craze about, if you want to buy blue ink, you can buy Pilot Blue Black for 500 milliliters for $3 or something. And I feel like that kind of conversation has mostly died out. We don't really hear, hey, let's get the most bang for your buck on ink, because maybe people realized we're never going to really use up all that ink. So if you only want to use blue, yeah, sure, go buy that, Pilot Blue Black for $5 or whatever. But if you're interested in a variety of different inks, smaller bottles is easier to store, collect, and I think fun.
Yeah, I agree that this whole thing about like price per ml is not a thing anymore. But I think the absolute price for an ink bottle still matters, and I think it's very telling that one of the new entrants this year, Kuretake, they didn't even bother with large ink bottles. They came into the market with just small bottles, small affordable bottles.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you don't just buy one, you buy a bunch of them, like they try different colors, and I think that is the trend. While we see less of this, Boombox Yaching style, 5,000 yen plus bottles. I think that may be more of a thing in the past.
And Kuretake, they used to with, or I think they still do, but with Mita, the pen store Mita, they used to come out with these scented pigmented inks with these very, very elaborate, cool like Kiriko bottles that were like $3,000-$4,000.
Yeah, beautiful
or
bottles.
yen.
Yeah.
And I feel like the kind of designer bottles maybe have faded a little bit with more functional, but as you said, smaller bottles. That's definitely something that I think we've seen. And Melissa, you talked about the guitar inks, the Teranishi chemical inks. I actually personally really, really like those inks, even like the colors, the story, the taishoroma, the entire packaging. I think they're really knockout for me, and I really love that they did the second release of these inks, and I think that that's definitely one of the ink brands non-Japanese consumers should try to get their hands on. They're not the flashiest of inks, but they're very nice.
Well, I think that one of the driving things, though, about that guitar ink is they were really smart about the packaging with that, kind of older, nostalgic look on their box. But they did everything very inexpensively. The box is just a cardboard box. They threw on a tag that you can put a color swatch on. That costs them nothing. They have an interesting mass-produced cap. It's just a tin cap, but it's really pretty. And they did all that for really cheap. It's one of the cheaper inks you can get here in Tokyo. And I think that was the real smart thing, is they gave you the packaging that you want to have fun with, but yet it's still very inexpensive compared to the other inks.
Yeah, I definitely like that.
And that brand is probably one of the biggest success stories this year. And I think that is quite a feat, because I remember last year around this time we were talking about these various Korean brands and we thought they were going to be big. They kind of fizzle out. They aren't really that available. And a lot of foreign brands or even Japanese brands have tried and not really succeeded at getting a foothold in Japan. Teranishi, they really managed to do that. They kept at it, they released like 1, 2, 3, 4 different series of inks. There are 16 of them now. They have the low cost, standard series inks. They have a pen. They have done a lot of stuff, and it really paid off. They are now one of the bigger ink brands, I would say, or at least in terms of mind share, because you see them everywhere.
Do you think that's also because Teranishi being a much older company, and they now make more products? They used to make inks for pens, but now they make a bunch of different lower cost products. They already have relationships with brands like Itoya and Tsutaya.
Well, yeah, the elephant in the room here is that Teranishi is part owned by Nakabayashi, so they have a big marketing muscle, and I think that has been a big contributing factor here. But I still think their strategy has paid off, and they are really one of the big success stories this year.
All right, so maybe that's bleeding into the future segments, but let's move on with reviewing our past predictions. I predicted that there would be a further divide between glass pen users and fountain pen users. In my opinion, that's been true. The reason why that's been true is because if you look at all the events that are happening, I think there are clearly events that glass pen users want to go to versus events that fountain pen users want to go to. Something that you'll see very clearly is, for example, the Maruzen Pen Show, right, or the Maruzen Pen Fair, whatever they want to call it. You see a certain demographic appear there, let's say. Whereas if you go to the same, in terms of like a Tono Limbs event, you have some fountain pens there, but that's certainly not the draw. I mean, if you told people like, I don't know, 3 years ago, right, at the 2019 Tokyo International Pen Show, that Kobayashi can go to an event and be one of the last tables to sell out of something, people would tell you that you're crazy, right? Whereas I remember in 2020, we had Hase at the Tokyo International Pen Show. He didn't sell out, and now he's selling out everywhere. But they don't even bother showing at the Tokyo International Pen Show anymore because they don't think that it's maybe the right audience. They don't think they have the right production. Instead, they go to like the Naniwa Pen Show, the Kobe Pen Show, and I think that's the strategy there is very specifically more targeted towards calligraphy / glass pen people.
Yeah, but at the tips we saw, Aon, for example, was one of their first one, and they were sold out in half an hour, even with tickets booking. So I think it's not. They will still have an audience for it. Either the show is targeting only fountain pen, like mostly fountain pen. I guess we discussed the Pelican Hubs too. The audience is moving towards more like Inkunuma, people's ladies. But yeah, I think it will maybe. I'm not sure if the separation is a good word. Maybe it will like more. The flux will go from one part to another part and maybe join at one point.
So that's what I think is lacking, is that there is no real customer journey that goes from glass pens to fountain pens right now that the companies are designing for the consumer. Maybe some consumers, they find it by accident, or maybe not, I don't know. But it's not something that's deliberately done right now. And I think it's actually an opportunity for a lot of companies to say, hey, we're going into this Irotsushi, we're going into this Hokoro kind of theme. How do we get the consumer to then level up to maybe the fountain pen, steel nibs, then level up to a gold nib fountain pen? How we bring them through this consumer journey? And I don't think there has been a lot of efforts in that realm. And I think that's why you see like, for example, you pointed out that Aon was in Tokyo International Pen Show, but there were like different glass makers at Maruzen even, but nobody really heard of them. They were kind of separated on a different floor. And even the autumn Maruzen shows, they had glass pen makers, but it wasn't the right demographic there. So how do we move one through another, and how do we transition these customers, these consumers, to actually merge and buy both products?
But I think that is a very fountain pen centric mindset, and I think that is the mistake that we have all done here for the last few years, that we assume that the natural progression as you get into ink is that you end up with fountain pens, that the ink becomes a complementary product for the fountain pen. And I think if anything, and I don't want to steal like Alesa's thunder because this is really her big prediction, but there have been ample opportunity for ink fans to get into fountain pens, and Mori-san was very early, trying to get the ink people into the Wagner events. We've seen that at various other events. You have both fountain pens and inks at toner and dims and so on. But I think what we're really seeing is that our prediction that they will all fall in love with fountain pens, that is not panning out. And I think that is because it's not so much. We assume that the fountain pen becomes a primary product and ink is just a complementary product. Instead, what is happening is that the ink is now the primary product, and fountain pen is just one of the many different complementary products. And there are also other complementary products that for many of these people are just more appealing. And it doesn't have to do with accessibility, not being able to buy them. It has to do with glass pens just being a more fun way to experience ink.
I agree there, but I think part of it is, I think my problem, like before, was like, yeah, you like ink, you're going to go into fountain pens, right? But I did stop to think that maybe the demographic, that when you're buying a bunch of ink and maybe you've put some serious money into glass pens, you don't mind trying things, but you don't want it to, you're not going to go out and buy a Sailor glittery pen, And I think a lot of them are trying some of the cheaper fountain pens, like the Fonte. You've got the different tips on the Fonte, so you can do a brush pen, you can do a glass pen, you can do a fountain pen. So I think that's one of the reasons why the cheaper fountain pens have exploded, is because if you are into, the ink swamp kind of thing, you can try some inks and you might spend $20 or $30 on a fountain pen, but you're not going to drop $200 on it. And that's also why I think like Ancora has the popularity of that put together pen. That put together pen is like, $20 or $30. So I think part of it, I was looking at it as a progression of like going from ink to like a nice sailor, because you like sparkly ink, maybe you like a sparkly sailor. But I think what it is, it's going from ink to the fountain pen is just another tool. And if it's just another tool, you're not going to drop $200 on it. You'll drop 10 or 20.
I think it's why all the Kaweco Pearl or the Twisby iridescent pen really, like, you saw them everywhere on Instagram last year, because many people get in the fountain pen with this, like, I would say not beginners, but like not that expensive brand, and they make the link between this kind of shimmering magic wand, what we like with the Sailor shimmering pen, and people who are not collectors of pilots, sailors, they will maybe get in this game with this kind of brand.
So I think that, being ink being the primary product and then the pen being an accessory product, I don't think that's necessarily an issue, but I think there's a lack of marketing in, like, for example, right? Glass pens are great. You can't really bring them out of the house. You can't really bring them around and just sit at a cafe and use them, right? So what are your alternatives? You use a ballpoint pen. Everybody has a ballpoint pen. You use a rollerball pen. Everybody has a rollerball pen. But what if you want to use the pens that you like in your glass pens? What if you want to bring them around? You use a fountain pen, or you can bring the bottle and have a dip pen with a cap, I suppose. But I don't see a lot of marketing around, hey, we know that you love inks, and we know that a lot of these people, they like going out to hang out with their girlfriends or their boyfriends in cafes. How are you going to use these products? Like, there are, I think, 4 plotters on this table right now, just on one half of the recording room. Hobonichi is always super, super popular. We're not seeing the pen companies make the effort to do that marketing and even if it's an accessory product, right, you still have to market to keep yourself relevant. Like, like, for example, like keyboards. Keyboards are an accessory product to a computer, but you still have to market them to make people want to buy them. And I think there isn't a thought out way for these companies. How are they going to make that pen? Because the pen is, I believe, always going to be the most expensive product, based on the complexity, on the materials, etc. It's always going to be the most expensive product. How are you going to entice people to buy these expensive products and move them upstream? And I think I was talking to the CEO of Dior many, many years ago, and he told me that his favorite business model was Tiffany. I think he's the CEO of Tiffany now, in Japan. And he said Tiffany is favorite business model because there's something for everybody. You go in, you buy your little girl a little bracelet, like a gift. And then when they're, teenagers, you buy them like a little ring or earrings. And then when, they're getting married, you buy them a diamond ring. And then when they're old, you buy them something like super elaborate high jewelry. So there's something for everybody. And there's a really planned out customer journey. What does that look like in the fountain pen world, where it's increasingly becoming more ink-centric?
Yeah, but I think the marketing happens. I mean, advertising doesn't necessarily mean taking a full page ad in Yomiuri Shimbun. Like that. That's not really the audience. Instead, if you want to market to these people, you go and put ads on Instagram, or you do like influencer marketing. And I think to some extent that happens. Maybe not so much the Japanese companies. It's more about the foreign companies are very active on Instagram with sponsored posts and influencer marketing. I think that really happens. And if you go to stationery stores, you do have. I mean, even at like lifestyle stores like Loft and Toki Hands, you do have a selection of fountain pens, and sometimes you have a tester set. I think that exists, but I think I don't think it's just about marketing. I think, and it ties into another thing I've been talking about on my blog, I think the Japanese companies in particular, they haven't done enough with their steel nib, the low-end fountain pens. I mean, Prera, great pen, but Prera hasn't seen a refresh in years. Curidas, what's going on with the Curidas? Come on. So I think it's less about marketing. It's more about doing something more interesting with the products, make them more appealing.
That's a great segue to your predictions last year, Jacob, because I know you took them off the show notes, but you were talking about lower end products last year. You were interested in seeing something in like the 5,000 yen range.
That wasn't so much a prediction as was wishful thinking. Right? I didn't say that's going to happen. I said I wanted that to happen, and that is still what I'm hoping. Well, now I still feel more confident that it's going to happen because really for the same reason, but it's more, I think, urgent now because the gold price just keeps going up, and it's now getting to a point where you have to decide whether to spend your month's rent or buy gold in a fountain pen, right? It's becoming the base price is becoming just too high, and I think that the lower end offerings from most of these Japanese fountain pen makers they don't really put enough effort into it. They have some good base model. Sailor maybe not so much, but Platinum's Procyon is a really interesting pen, but it needs more love. Prera needs more love. I think they have something they can work with. I just wish they would do that.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a question for you on this point. Is do you think that people want lower priced pens because of poor economic times, or do you think that it has been something that has just been missing in the market?
So what I think is missing is, so when you talk about the gold nib pens, I think there's always going to be a market for pens for collectors, pens for graduation gifts. But what I'm talking about is pens that you can find. Going back to this example with Loft and Tokyo Hands, I'm looking for pens that you can see in stores like that, and you try for the first time in your life like a Prera with a stub nib, and you realize, wow, this is really fun to write with, and I can use my existing collection of exotic inks, and this is just like 5,000 yen. Let me get one to play with. Right? So less of a collector's item, less of a gift, more of an actual writing instrument for everyday use. I think that's what I want to see more of.
But that was what the 74 was, right? That was what the Promenade was. But they were obviously priced a little bit higher.
But the Promenade and Custom 74, at least the standard black and gold ones, they were never. Even those pens were kind of gifts, right? You have the black and gold traditional gifts for an occasion. It's not something you would buy for yourself because that's a fun nib and it looks appealing, I think.
So what do you think is the appropriate price range for this? Because, when you say 5,000 yen, that's still a lot of money for somebody who maybe doesn't really understand the pricing of these products.
Yeah, I'm thinking somewhere around sort of the Twisby Echo price range, because we talked about that a few episodes ago. I think elsewhere, Kaweco and Twisby have been very successful with these entry-level, fun pens that people can buy. I think that would be the right price range. Think of it as 2 bottles of ink worth of money.
So about $30-ish?
Yeah. Or like the Moonman too.
Moonman?
Yeah. Around 30, 40 maximum dollars.
Something like that.
And it's interesting that you bring up the Twisby Echo, because the Echo has actually price increased a few times in Japan. Now they're about 8,000 yen.
In Japan, Taiwanese pens have always been. The price has never made sense in Japan. That doesn't, common problem. But I'm talking about the price of Kaweco and Twisby in US and Europe.
Okay, so about maybe 3,000-ish yen.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a sweet spot where you can still do kind of an impulse buy, right? Here's a fun-looking pen with an interesting nib, and I can use my funky tonal limb ink with it.
I'm wondering the development cost to create a new model. It has to last more than the next 5-ish years, right? The investment, if they were to do this, the investment would be to make this model last like at least 15, 20 years, investing in tooling and other stuff like that. And so that's why I'm asking, do you think it's because people are facing inflation for first time in 40 years in Japan, or whether you think that's something that is actually needed in the market? But yeah, I do agree with you that if there was something more whimsical, something more fun in that range, it would be able to bridge that gap, right?
Yeah, I don't think it has so much to do with inflation or the effect. I'm talking about fountain pen in this new role as a complementary product for an ink. You have bought your 2 bottles of Ferris wheel pressed and toner limbs ink, and you bought your Fonty glass pen, and now you see like a 3,000 yen fountain pen, and you can use that with your existing collection of ink. I think that is a market that may not have existed in the same way before.
Right. And then your prediction last year was more companies will release metal dip pens, and then you kind of made a shout out to Shown Design to make a metal nib.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I was kind of hoping, or I mentioned that in the context of like dip pens. He didn't make a dip pen, but he did make his own nibs. I give myself an A- for that. But for metal dip pens, I mean this has been the year of metal dip pens. Like you have Iro Utsushi, you have the second generation Hokora pens, you have Kakimori's pen nib, which came out this year, and now, as Khuê pointed out recently, even Midori now is getting into that dip pen game. So this is really, I'm giving myself an A+ on that.
A+ all around. All right, Khuê, you said that dip pens that don't need necessarily like expertise. So, for example, a lot of, you mentioned last year, the brows ornamental or dip pens for calligraphy use exists, but something maybe less specialized is something that you thought was gonna come up.
Yeah,
Would you give yourself an A+ as well?
As well, plus.
A++.
Yeah, like Jacob just said, Hokoro pushed the game further with the Fude nib, and they get the second series of special nib out, and we saw a lot of small companies who just launched their own dip pens, their own brass, or even some glass pen. Exchange, you can change just the nib. So I think it's getting in the game. Yeah.
All right. And Alesa, you said that women will continue to drive trends in the space. Do you think that has come true?
I'm going to give myself an A+ too, since everybody else has given themselves an A+.
A+ all around.
No, I think it is. I think, and it's mainly because of the ink. And I've just found that even I'm not big on social media, but just seeing like the analytics like on my YouTube channel, I'm getting more women subscribers, which when I first started, it was literally like maybe down 10, 20%. And now it's not quite half, but so I think there's just a lot more interest in the whole fountain pen ink world from women. And I think that's from the inclusiveness of, ink being pretty and ink, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. I think that's drawing a lot of women in, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, and we were talking about that the last time with Alicia, is like the merging between ink and the perfume or aesthetic worlds are just very strong. From Ferris press wheels, of course, but recently even Krishna, the Indian brand, they recustomize all their bottles, and you see this parallel of small, like nice boxes with very good designs, and the bottles are kind of very photogenic. So on your Instagram posts, you just post some bottles around, and it gives this very fashion feedback on your picture with 1 or 2 accessories. So I think the game is really strong for this company who aim for female audience kind of, and the people respond to it.
Yep. All right. And before we move on to looking back at the kind of awards for 2022, what would we give an overall grade to, the year? If you had to give a grade, was it a A++ year?
I wouldn't know how to quantify it.
It's okay. They're all subjective opinions anyways. Jacob, would you give this year an A++?
I think in many ways it's been more interesting than last year because we've seen sort of a shift for the big fountain pen makers, a shift toward ink and dip pens, and I think they've really executed well on that. Or at least one company has executed well on that. So I give it an A for being more interesting than last year.
Khuê?
Yeah, and maybe because we got out from the pandemic too, like all the event, like in-person event went back, and we start to see foreign visitors in foreign companies getting in Japan too, and it was more like exciting, of course, compared to 2020 or 2021. Yeah, so A+.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, it seemed like it was and I think that's partly because of the influence of, more the ink people and glass pen people, because now we're looking at so many kinds of tools, and I think bringing in more different aspects of the hobby has made it so much more interesting, more to cover.
All right. And let's do kind of like a rapid fire round of 2022. So I have some stuff here. I'm not going to go in order. Let's start with the best purchase of the year. What was your best purchase of 2022? Alesa, why don't you go first?
Well, I don't know what the best, but my most recent was a striped Mew. So I'm like, for someone who's like into new pens, I kind of like had a momentary hiccup and did a vintage. So vintage is still in the game, everybody. Even though we love talking about ink and all this new stuff, vintage still is cool.
Awesome. Khuê?
So for me, it was neither a pen, neither an ink. It was the Table Kubo magnetic wooden board that I use almost every day, either for writing letters or ink swatching or sketching, because it doesn't mark on the paper and it's so easy to use. And the fun thing is the magnetic clip can be either horizontal or vertical. So you can find it on Kakimori website if you are interested, or like outside of Japan, if not on their own website, Table Kubo.
Jacob?
I haven't bought that much this year, and I thought a bit about that. One thing that came to mind now, just because it's in front of my eyes, is my pre-plotter prototype Knox branded plotter. I have more or less moved away from notebooks toward binders, because I don't feel this like it's not intimidating to start a new planner, because you can just move stuff around and you can switch papers. I don't know in advance, what topics you're going to be writing about and how much of each, and I don't need to worry about that with a binder. So binders in general, and my pre-plotter in particular.
That's a good point, actually. I like that a lot. For me, it's not going to be a strictly stationary product, but I think my champagne pink portable InSpic sticker printer is going to be my best purchase of the year. And the reason is because I've been struggling with Hobonichi, with planning for the past 2 or 3 years. I always do well on January 1st, 2nd, maybe 3rd, and then I fall off. But I feel like this InSpic is going to help me keep more memories, because I can just print them out, stick them in, and then once I stick them in, I'll just write a little thing about it, and they'll be over. It will reduce the burden of having to write a full page every day.
I thought you will say your camera.
I haven't done enough on pens yet to do the camera, but maybe next year. Maybe next year. All right. So what about the most wildest or most unexpected new product of the year? And maybe I'll start this time. I'm going to go with the Mont Blanc Naruto 146. I think that was pretty funky. Khuê?
For me, it was the tiny glass pen from Clarto that I discovered from Alicia, who was, first of all, very cute and tiny, but it can write, so you can really write, and it was really, it was blowing my mind that it's so small.
Jacob?
I think Pilot has surprised us a few times this year with some unexpected products. To me, the top of that list is the signature nib. Out of nowhere, they came and introduced an all-new nib, and it was not really clear why, and not really clear why it was done in a certain way, because it's not actually the same nib as the old signature nib. It's all very surprising, and it's all very unclear why it happened, but I love it, and I think once that's going to be released, I assume it's going to be released outside Japan eventually. I think it's going to be it.
Yeah, that was a good one. So you took mine, so I got to come up with another one. No, actually, I think it's a tie between two for me. One of them, Khuê brought it today, is the Clarto little glass tube. And instead of using a dropper when you're taking ink out of your bottle, you just hold the little hole in the top of the tube, and you pull the ink out, and then you can put it over to your, your ink pot, another ink pot or a beaker, and then you let go of the hole, and the ink comes out, and then you literally just dunk it in water, and it's clean. It's really easy way to transfer ink. So that was pretty imaginative. And as far as pens, I think probably the Shape of Heart. You're going to talk about that later, I think? Maybe. Oh, okay. But anyways, I just thought it was just the weirdest pen in the world, having all those little glittery things on the end and the breather hole. So, yeah, I bought one.
All right. And what about the most disappointing new product?
You and I are probably thinking the same thing. I'm right here. I think we're both thinking the same thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to go? It's that. What's the name? I don't even remember the name. It's the Pilot dip pen.
Yeah, Utoshi.
Yeah. I just didn't even bother to buy it. I tried it and it was awful, and it's just awful.
Yeah, I had that one in mind too, and it's just like the idea was right. Well, the idea to just release a dip pen, but you need to do something more than just put like a kakuno nib on a stick, right? It wasn't enough.
It was a kakuno popsicle stick. That's what it was. Yeah.
Maybe my most disappointing product. It's not the worst product, but the most disappointing is the Moonman C4, because it's one annoying flaw away from being my pen of the year. Right, Moonman C4 has exactly the right shape. That's classic Sakai-esque shape. It's got a funny little clip, and it's got like beautiful high quality acrylic. It's got an ink dome system that works really well, but the threading is bad. It's one super annoying flaw away from being just a spectacular pen. That's why it's disappointing.
You can't cop out of this year.
Yeah, I didn't find anything. No, it was a good year. A++.
Oh, A++.
A cop out again. You copped out last year, you copping out this year. Okay.
I fully support that, though.
All right. What about the most fun product? Not necessarily like super wild, but we had fun with this product. And I'm going to go with the Pilot Signature Nib. I think it's not like necessarily super wild, but I think that it's definitely really fun to, finally reintroduce a new nib, and not in the way that like Mont Blanc does it, right? Like Mont Blanc, they introduce something for like 1 year and it costs like $2,000, but they really have this on something that's quite reasonably affordable. It's not a premium over the other products, and it's just, when do you see a pen company put out a completely new grind? Great. Most fun product?
I guess Plotter was my weakness last year, and I enjoy so much, as Jacob said before, I enjoy so much writing, sketching, cutting papers in every size and every direction, and it's as Jacob said, it's the fact that you can just take out paper, just throwing some out and adding more, it's just doesn't block you from messing, and it was very fun.
Yeah, and the Mini 3.
The Mini 3, of course. I still have to cut papers to fit in that one, but yeah, Plotter was really strong last year, and I think it will still this year, at least for me.
I don't know. They were all fun. I'm just going to pull this one out. Just probably the ink from Fuga pens that's made out of goji berries. I like it. It's a really pretty color, and it kind of smells good. And he puts like something like 450 grams of like goji berry juice in there or something. But then I brought it to our last pen show, and everybody just freaked out and loved it. And then I kind of like it even more. So yeah, probably Fugu Pen's goji berry ink.
So for context, I think last year we talked about how Inkunuma just growing, but the one thing that is holding it back, especially outside Japan, the one thing that is preventing Inkunuma from really taking off outside Japan is the lack of glass pen availability, right? And I think the one product that has changed that this year is this 1,000 yen glass pen from Fonte, which is now available outside Japan as well. And I think this is like the missing catalyst that is going to make Inkunuma really take off outside Japan. And it actually works quite well. And again, it's 1,000 yen, and it is the perfect complementary product for your crazy inks.
And remind us, Fonte, do they rebrand Gin House, I think?
Well, that's why we were critical of them at first, because that's how they started out. They sold what was clearly something that came from the same injection mold as Jinhao 992, but since then they have moved on to brush pens, to ballpoints, and this year this glass pen, which is actually a real glass pen, and it's about 1,000 yen. And I actually bought this one yesterday at Mother's Day, and I'm just surprised at how well it works. And this is the missing piece.
All right, Fonte, most fun pen or most fun product of the year. Moving on to the best planner or best notebook of the year. I'll start. I think for me, Plotter definitely had a huge splash. I was at the SF Pen Show where they made a build your own plotter at the show, which was really fun. They came out with the Mini 3, which is really fun. Obviously, they had the Mini 5 already before. They came out with so many new leather covers. And Jacob, as you said, really not intimidating to start a new plotter because you can just rip it out and put something else in. So for me, that would be the best planner / planning product of the year.
Same here. I'm repeating myself. But I'm still very loyal to Traveler Notebook and Hobonichi, but I use them as I always use them as journal and daily planner. But the plotter system is more for all the ink swatches and taking notes. We were talking about grocery list and stuff like that, and it's really, changed my life.
Changes. Okay.
Changed my life.
I'll take credit for that too.
I still am very partial to Hobonichi, and that's what I use as a planner. But I totally think, as far as something new that people will really like, is the plotter. I think, like Jacob was saying, you can change things out. The only reason I don't use a plotter for a planner is because I'm one of those people that will obsessively keep changing everything. And the plotter allows you to do that. So I would never know what was going on because I would be changing everything. But it's...
That's why you buy more than one.
Yeah, there you go. But one of the things I think is interesting is Hobonichi is kind of neutral. And when you look at... travelers, they're kind of like, rugged, and you're going to go traveling and you're going to, do all this exciting stuff. With the plotter went the other direction, is very elegant. And the little metal bar in the end, the different kinds of really nice leather, and all the different inserts, it's very elegant. So I think as far as like the breakout planner that people are going to go crazy over, it's going to be the plotter.
So I think one of the fun trends is that we've seen more and more types of paper for plotters and other ring binders. And I think my favorite product I'm going to mention is not a planner as such, but it's a complementary product, which is Da Vinci's bamboo paper refills for plotters, and Walt Da Vinci, of course, and any other plotter. It's surprisingly good paper. It's environmentally friendly, and it's a good product.
I agree. I did buy that as well. Now, moving on to the best company of the year. For me, it would be Pilot. Even though they had some misses, I know that the Iroutsushi, I think, was really critical about it when it first came out, specifically because, as you said, it's really just a kakuno on a stick, right? However, they came out with the Neoclassic, which was, came out of left field at nowhere really, and they gave an injection of fun to this really nice 912 model that I hope proved to Pilot that colors are still fun, even if those colors are not maybe the most fun colors, but at least they can do something that's not black and gold. I think with the signature nib that came out, really, really, really cool. And I think that for Pilot, this year has actually been quite a fast year for their product releases. They came out with new inks at the end of last year. First time they refreshed the Iroshizuku line in, ages. Maybe the Pilot fanboy in me can hope that this is a sign that they're actually still investing in their fountain pen division rather than just the other toys or pencils or whatever they're doing nowadays. Maybe there's still hope that they actually really care. Oh, and they released the size 30 in Namiki. So that was another thing. With Nagasawa, they did an exclusive with Nagasawa. So I think Pilot did a good job in 2022. In 2023, I'm already a little bit disappointed at the Maruzen custom Urushi, but who knows? I'm holding out and hoping that Pilot will still surprise me. Jacob?
I agree that Pilot had a very strong year. I think that the three most coveted fountain pens this year were all Pilot. You had Boombox Fujiyama Blue, you had the capless Hana Shobo, and you have Maruzen's Green Custom Urushi. So, Pilot had a very strong year, but I still think that they mostly focus on fountain pens. So I would say Sailor, not because of their endless Pro Gear releases. I don't care about those, but instead, between the second generation Hokuro and Yurameku inks, I think they are among the three big pen makers, the one that is most, Inkunuma savvy right now.
I'm going to go not fountain pens. I'm going to go with Clarto, and they're just such an interesting company. They're actually made here in Ryogoku in Tokyo, and they bridge the gap between really beautiful designs and practicality. And so a lot of their pens are really pretty, but they're very useful. And they have so many different kinds of tools. Like I was talking about earlier, the thing to take up ink. There are different glass pens, and Khuê brought up the little tiny one, which is, I don't know why, it just does something to me. And there are different kinds of beakers. They understand using glass pens and ink. And I think they're going to be really popular this year, and they were really interesting this past year.
All right.
Yeah, I will jump as Alesa on Clarto, as we just discovered them this last month, and I will want to give a shout out to Aon in Kurashiki, because we knew the glass pen in Japan was in the game for some years, but what I really appreciate with Aon is the fact that they can test new. They don't only do glass pen. They design the glass pen some with liquids, like the Storm series, who have crystals inside. So they make more than glass pen. It's really a very beautiful object that you can, of course, collect if you like to collect things, as I am, or just to hold in your hands. Is more than just a pen, and their customer service is always incredible. So, for example, you buy a B-nib, and after 1 or 2 months you are not that happy with that, you can ship it back to their shop in Kurashiki and ask them to make a F-nib or another nib, and they will just change the nib for you, melt the glass and change the nib and ship it back to you. And this is incredible because, of course, you have to be in Japan, but you have one glass pen, but you can change 4 times the nibs in 1 year if you want to. And for that, it's really a very good service.
All right, and moving on, the best store of the year, I'm going to steal Bunga Box. I think, obviously it's their, I believe, 10th anniversary. They came out with a bunch of different products. And, it's been a great year for them, from the Mikabi Mikan, which I think was a knockout, to obviously everybody went crazy over the Bunga Box Fujiyama 823, and then they re-released Silent Night, Cinderella. So they had really, I think, a strong year. Really answered to what the consumer wanted, and they also did a couple of KOP pens, and they have a special engraved KOP engraved nibs now, not just laser engraving. So I think overall, Bungabox, my store of the year.
Same, Bungo Boss was really strong, and Mikan, who for someone who's not in orange, it was one of my favorite pen of last year. From the packaging, everything they do around the stories of the Mikan, they are really good. And I really like Shoshakan Daikanyama for their customer service. Every time I visit their shop. Tsutaya. Every time I visit their shop, they are just like so patient, kind. They let you try all the pen. You are like a VIP customers every time you get in this shop. So hello, thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump on Bungabox, and just for any of your listeners that aren't real familiar, you can go online and they do ship overseas. So that's a real plus for them, because so many stores are so recalcitrant about that. And
SAT word.
And then also, like, if you do come to Tokyo, you'll want to go to their little tiny Ometasando shop. And it's amazing that such a small little area where if you get like 3 people in there, it's crowded and can pack such a punch. Just so many different kinds of pens and interesting ink and paper and stuff. So yeah, I think, and then, the Fujiyama blue on top of that. They just have a real eye for what's interesting.
And they did a stealth release ink called Blue Bird. I bet none of you have heard of that, but maybe I'll bring it next time.
I would say Okamoto, because I think that is the store for anyone who is into ink and visiting Tokyo. It's probably one of the lesser known stores. Like, everyone knows about Maruzen and Kakimori and Itoe and so on. But if you're into ink, there's no better store in Tokyo than Okamoto. It's a beautiful storefront, looks like some temple, and then had this ink testing station where you have like literally hundreds of ink that you can test, and you're inevitably going to end up buying a bunch of them, of course, as Alesa knows very well. And it's one of the few stores in Tokyo where you actually have a large selection of glass pens, including some pretty rare brands that otherwise are hard to buy, whether in brick and mortar or offline or online. And they are like on top of ink trends before any other store. The ink cards, they know what Betchori is doing, what Moe is doing. Like they're like the epicenter of the Inkunuma trend.
That's so true. They're the epicenter of the Inkunuma trend.
And
here.
Don't they they're least partly own
They are Tono.
Tono limbs? Yeah, they are
Tono.
Mr. Tono, right?
They are Mr. Tono.
He actually owns the store?
No, as I understood, the owner is Tono in Tono and Limbs.
Of Okamoto.
Yes.
But it's like a really old store for like office goods.
Yeah, but I think the next generation, I think he's around our age, and he's when they released 2 years ago, when they released this Tono and Nim collaboration, and they make this black, white, shimmering ink.
I remember that.
I remember I visited the shop and they said, "Oh, this is my daughter drawing."
Okay, then I'll just ask him.
Yeah, you have to ask him.
I'm the clumsy gaijin that just rolls in there and asks all kinds of
I think
embarrassing
the owner
questions.
is Tono in Tono and Limbs.
Okay, I'll
my
definitely
guess,
ask
but-
him. Yeah,
And they were the first retailers to carry it.
Yeah, they
Yes.
were. They were.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they have the
carry
whole collection.
like every single type they have, and the majority of their ink is Tono and Limbs. You're right. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good indicative store this year.
So just for visitor, check out because they are closed on weekends.
Yeah.
They're only open on weekdays.
So the Ojisan is still strong in that store.
Exactly.
All right. What about the best content we consumed this year, Khuê?
Tokyo Inklings, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. Alyssa?
Okay, I'll say Tokyo Inklings too, but then I want to point to Jacob's How to Buy a Pen from Japan. I think that's probably
that was good.
What's good about that. It's short and concise. You can read it and figure it out really quick. So if you want to buy a pen from Japan and you can't find, you get it to go to your country, check it out, and figure out how to get it shipped to you.
So, Alesa's channel is, of course, it's the channel for anyone interested in Japanese stationery and topics. But if you're specifically interested in ink reviews, new Japanese inks, then I would recommend a relatively new YouTube channel called Nikki Notebook. I think you've seen her on Instagram. Absolutely beautiful ink reviews. She does illustrations and uses glass pens and dip pens, and it's probably the best channel for ink reviews.
Nikki Notebook?
Nikki Notebook.
I love her Instagram page. It's very nice.
All right, and then I'm gonna go with somebody that's not part of this group. I actually really enjoyed the Khuê Pencast this year. Not because I go to them to find out any kind of breaking news or whatever, but their podcast is very long and very rambly, and it's just the perfect companion to washing dishes or folding laundry. And I think listening to their podcast really made me understand why they've been so successful at connecting with their customers. They've really become something really like a personal brand, right? They're really personable. And when Drew goes out to shows, people, they recognize him, they recognize his voice. And I think they've done a good job at not necessarily, I think, talking about the products themselves, but really more than just the products. It's actually getting to know the people behind the company. And I think that's really nice. All right, the best, or rather, the news of the year. I'm going to start with Twisby versus Narwhal. I think that's my news of the year. Jacob?
So I would say 2022 was the year of pen drama, and I'm so fed up with that. I don't want to hear any more drama this year. That's my answer.
Okay, so all the drama was the news, and no more drama for
no more drama. I'm so fed up with drama.
Elsa?
Okay, there's drama?
The Mont Blanc Gate was last year.
Mont Blanc Gate was 2021.
Oh, okay.
So there was Twisby trying to close off Narwhal. Right. There was Noodlers with anti-Semitic horns and stuff like that. But outside of that, there's been a lot of different news. So what was the news for you?
The news?
Yeah, or happening. Okay.
I'm coming up with a blank here.
Deferred?
Yeah, me too. I don't think of...
All right, deferred. All right, so all the drama, news / happening of the year, and no more for 2023. The best, we're coming to the close, the best event of the year. Jacob.
I'm not sure if it's the best, but I think what is increasingly becoming the most important event of the year is actually Toner and Limbs ink events, plural form. I mean, we have criticized them so much in the past that it was badly organized and it was overcrowded and it was just chaotic. But it's quickly becoming the event for anyone who's into ink, and everyone is at Toner and Limbs, and that's the only way to get some of the most coveted inks and glass pens. The whole Inkinuma community gathers at these Toner and Limbs events. I would say that.
Would you say that the kind of community they have is something that Tips wanted to become?
Well, I think that it looked like there were more people at Toner and Limbs than at Tips. So if a lot of people translate into sales, then I'm sure Tips will be happy with that.
Okay. Alyssa, best event?
And for me, hands down, it's Tips. And I'm not saying that, just because it's the big pen show. Yeah, I get it about the Toner and Limbs. But I think for me, what makes Tips good is that it encompasses everything. You've got glass pens there, you have lots of ink, you have all kinds of fountain pens, you've got all kinds of paper, and then you've got even where the middle school boys show up and buy those little wooden mechanical pencils. I mean, they come in by the tons. So you've just got a huge range of what's available there and the different kind of people there. It's really interesting compared to many other pen shows that when you do sit in on tips, you'll see someone as young as, we're not talking just tagging along with their parents. We're talking they came by themselves and they're like 11 or 12, all the way up to like, someone geriatric. And you're going to see that whole range there at tips. And I think that speaks to me.
All right, great.
Tips has been really good for all the organization too. Like you have a slot, you get there half an hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes before. You have a number assigned to your position. You just get in. Everything is very fluid. Everything is very easy. There is no like queuing for 3 hours outside in the cold or stuff like that. And
so I'm the only one that went to Bunga Joshi.
yeah. So like if I need to choose between Tono and Limbs and Tips, of course it will be Tips, because Tono and Limbs get closer and closer to Bunga Joshi, who is one of my biggest nightmare. As I'm afraid of big ladies crowd, completely savage when it's happened to limited edition. I think they can bite you if they want to get the pen or the ink that are on sale, only 20 piece of them. So yeah, Tips for that was really good. And for one unique event was the opening of TSL in Kurashiki. Was really, really family friendly and really nice, and but it's only one shot. Like they won't open every year, right?
See, you took mine. For me, the best event was the TSL opening in Kurashiki. I didn't go for the opening event, but I think their store there is definitely one of the highlights of the year for me. It was super, super fun. Definitely worth the trip out there. And plus, Kurashiki is such a picturesque city that for me it was really worth it. On top of that, I understand that the partner shops that carry TSL, they get to go to Kurashiki and order products. I mean, it's just a very, very well done store, a well done concept, and I think it was just brilliant. I definitely had the most fun out there. All right, moving on. Best paper of the year. Alesa, you first this time.
Oh, I'm going to be so blasphemous. I really am. I use Tomoe River, and I like the new successor to Tomoe River. But as far as like a new paper, I'm going to have to go with the Smooth Onion Skin, just because it's just different, and you can use alcohol-based ink, so people who do Copic markers and stuff, you can use it. And it's just got that nice crinkly feel. So yeah, for breakout new paper, it's a Smooth Onion Skin.
I like that. Jacob?
So one of my favorite trends is that we are moving away from, at least in Japan, we're moving away from this one-dimensional view that paper is like one size fits all, there is one ultimate paper. Instead, we have now this explosion of papers, and different papers have different characteristics, and you want to try ink on like 5 different papers. No product exemplifies that better than Yamamoto Paper's Memo Box. So that's my paper product.
Yeah.
All right, I like that.
You stole my idea too. So Yamamoto, the memo pad and all the A4, like they sell this like a 20 or 50 sheet folders of all kind of different papers, fountain pen friendly, painting like watercolor friendly, crayon or pencil friendly, and these are so much fun to cut them, put them in your plotter. If you don't have a plotter yet, you know what you have to do. And I don't get any discount from plotters. It's really just my own point of view. But yeah, Yamamoto is really strong.
Yeah, Takayuki-san, if you're listening to this, お願いします. All right. For me, I think I like the idea of this Smooth Onion Skin paper. I've used that as well. I really like it. I like Slight White. I think that was a really, really nice paper. Really kind of precise and textured feel. For me, that was my favorite product of the year. All right, now best ink, and I know that ink it's too wide. You can't have just one best ink, maybe. So maybe the best ink company. And maybe I can start first. I think Diamine, actually. When we first had this Inkvent calendar, it was, I think, just a fun one-shot thing. But now this is the 3rd year in a row. They've really established themselves as a must-buy of the season. I've never bought the Inkvent calendar. I don't think any of us have bought the Inkvent calendar. However, I think it's undeniable how successful this is. All the stores are carrying it. It gets sold out every single year, and they're innovating within the Inkvent ink. So they have these like chameleon inks now. I don't even know what they do, but I think for a company that's one of the oldest ink manufacturers in the world, they've really pushed themselves to the limit, especially when it comes to ink. So I think Diamine, best ink company of the year.
I got to pass on that. I like them all, so yeah, it's gonna be too hard.
You guys are cop outs.
No, if you've asked me the honest questions, I don't have a favorite.
All right, Jacob.
So I think I have to go with Toner and Limbs, not because of any specific inks, but because of their ability to not only stay on top of trend, but to drive the trends and to be so dominant in this hyper competitive market. I hats off to Toner and Limbs.
Yeah, that's probably.
That's a good point. And Khuê?
I will go with Korean brand. Dominant industry. Not because of their ink, because we talked about this exactly 1 year ago when they released all this pearlescent and shimmering ink, and they have this very nice glass cap that you can use on your bottle when you are ink swatching. But they released recently some watercolor palette where they indicate on their website that you can use them with dip pen. So it's not just watercolor, you use with brushes or something, but you can make a little bit like Tag has done with their ink stick. You can make some shimmering ink from watercolor and then use your glass or dip pen to write or to draw with it. So I guess there is a bigger market in the ink field to test different medium, and this is very interesting. And then Reringal, I'm not sure for the pronunciation.
Reringal.
You're
only allowed to have one best company.
Well, she can take mine since I didn't.
I think I
didn't choose one.
Who has many favorites, and they always have this like stories again around the set of ink they release, which is really funny and interesting how you can mix them together. And they are two of my favorite brands for this year, last year.
All right, and last but not least, the best pen of the year. Jacob, why don't you start us off?
Sailor second generation Hokoro with Fude nib.
The one with the feed.
Hey,
the one with the feed. Yeah, I mean, I think
He pulled it out.
I know.
I have it here ready. Yeah, I mean, this is such an improvement over the first generation, and to me, this is the first dip pen that is actually really so good that it can compete with a glass pen. It holds a lot of ink. This nib is, this is a Fude nib, right? Of course, it's great. And
says Fude fan.
Says Fude fan. No, I mean this shows that Sailor stays on top of all the Inkunuma trends, and I think this pen, which I don't think is available, at least not widely available outside Japan yet, I think this is going to be a smash hit.
Khuê?
For the pen, very difficult question. I think the Bungu Box Mikan Mikabi was my favorite pen of the year. From the whole set. Yeah, it was a very nice. I still have the cardboard box.
And the ink was really nice.
The ink is really nice, and it was. And I discovered that I love orange, so thank you, Bungu Box.
Or darn you. All right, Alesa?
Fujiyama Blue.
Fujiyama Blue. All right, and for me, I will say the Sailor Realo model. I've been a big fan of this model for many years, but I think this year they came out with loads of Sailor Realo pens. So we started the year off with like Pentanoto. We had 2 Izumi ones. We had, I believe, 2 Bungu Box ones, as well as a bandless one from Nagasawa. And I think we're finally getting to see the power of this model over the quote-unquote standard Pro Gears. So not the Pro Gear standard, but the standard Pro gears. So I'm hoping that more retailers will pick this up after seeing success from other retailers. So that's my wish for next year or this year. And in terms of our predictions, let's go real quickly. Melissa, your prediction for 2023?
Oh, I'll just stick with my original that that ink and ink play is going to be the driving force of all of it, and fountain pens will become an accessory to ink.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the people who are not inside the stationary writing world yet will get in by the inks, and it will be huge.
Jacob?
So I wrote 4 predictions on my blog post, but I'm going to mention one of them here, which is that I think 2023 will be the year of iron gall inks. So we have started to see some experiments with iron gall ink. Eric and Mart, Kawasaki Bungo 10 has done some like remixing of platinum inks. But we haven't seen, Tone & Lims, Teranishi and others. And what I suspect is that we will see that. And I think all the stars are aligning for iron gall to come back. People using more and more glass pens. Iron gall is safe for glass pens. We have this color changing ink trend this year. I think this is the natural continuation of the color changing ink trends. And also I think, Tone & Lims and others, they have sort of exhausted all the other, various flavors of inks you can make, right? This is like the final frontier, right?
The last evolution.
Yes, exactly. So this is the year, it's going to be the year of iron gall ink.
All right. And then for me, I'm going to say that we're going to see more pens with more complexities. I think we're at the end, or maybe not at the end, but there's a fatigue of just standard pens that take converters or eyedroppers. So I think more things like Inkidome, more filling systems, maybe safeties. I think more, especially non-large manufacturers, will invest in these complexities to stand out from the crowd. So that's going to be my wild prediction. And I thought it would be nice to end with just talking about what goals we have. Maybe not necessarily resolutions, but what things we want to achieve in 2023. Also because you're looking at me.
Okay. Actually, I was just thinking that this year I'd like to go to Kurashiki. You guys have talked about it a lot, and I think it would just be a fun thing to both experience and probably share with other people, because watching you guys' stuff, it just looks really like a lot of fun.
We're going to go in March, so I'll send you the dates.
I'm hoping to get more into video this year. That's a short one.
Short and concise, I like it. Okay.
I hope to sell more pens than to buy.
Me too.
Good luck.
And for me, I'm working on a new website and a new brand. I'm going to retire my current website. Hopefully that's going to come out in the next few weeks. I feel like I've done a lot to flesh out my business part of stationery. And I know that I'm late on few orders just because, one person doing 5,000 things is just almost impossible. But I think I've made a few good connections this year. And hopefully next year it's going to really take form and take shape. So that's my goal for the next year. And last but not least, a little announcement on our schedule for the next year. So life has become more and more busy for all of us as we pass through different stages of life, as well as our relationship with stationery, right? So we've been recording on a bi-weekly schedule for the past almost 2 years. And it's time to kind of take a step back and reduce that schedule. So Tokyo Inklings will record, I think, once a month. And really just depends on whether we have time. Maybe sometimes it'll be less, sometimes it'll be more, who knows. But we're going to have a goal of once a month recording for the next year at least. And I am working on a separate podcast as well, so you'll be hearing from me soon on another medium as well. So I think that kind of wraps up 2022 and brings us into 2023 nicely with what we want to do and what the future might look like. Thank you, everybody, once again for joining, and for all the listeners who have supported us for a long time. Really glad to have you guys here, and hopefully we'll have a great year in 2023. So with that being said, my name is CY. You can find me for now at TokyoStationPens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at TokyoStationPens, and on Twitter at TokyoStationMNH.
And my name is Jacob. I'm Foodor fan on Instagram, TikTok, and elsewhere.
And my name is Khuê. You can find me on Instagram at MidnightCat. And thanks for having me. Happy New Year to everyone.
And Alesa, Happy New Year from Minky Rocks.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.